The helicopter rotors cut through the silence like surgical blades, but Commander Zara Akafer barely registered the sound. Her eyes remained fixed on the tactical display glowing green against the pre-dawn darkness of the command center aboard the USS Leviathan. 3 hours ago, 6 Navy SEALs had vanished during a routine reconnaissance mission in the Strait of Hormuz. No distress signals, no final transmissions, just nothing. "Ma'am, we're getting interference on all channels," reported Lieutenant Torres, his voice tight with barely concealed frustration. "Whatever took out Bravo team is jamming our communications." Zara's fingers drummed against the aluminum console, a habit she developed during her days as a Navy pilot, back when her call sign had been Whisper, not for her quiet demeanor, but for how silently she could slip past enemy radar. That was before she'd left active duty, before she'd built her fortune in defense contracting, before she'd become the mysterious billionaire who funded half the Navy's most classified operations. Few knew that the woman writing the checks had once been the pilot they'd nicknamed Ghost Bird. "Time since last contact?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. 3 hours, 14 minutes, Torres paused. "Admiral Chen wants to launch a full-scale rescue operation at 800. That's 4 hours from now." Zara's voice carried the kind of calm authority that made junior officers straighten their spines without understanding why. "Those men will be dead by then." The command center fell silent except for the electronic hum of communications equipment desperately searching for signals that weren't there. Through the reinforced windows, the Persian Gulf stretched endlessly under a moonless sky, its surface black as oil and twice as treacherous. Somewhere out there, in that vast darkness, 6 of America's finest warriors were either fighting for their lives or already beyond help. "Ma'am," a communications specialist called from across the room, "we're picking up something on the emergency frequency. It's unusual." Zara moved to the station with the fluid precision of someone accustomed to high-stakes situations. The audio was crackling, barely audible through layers of static and interference. But embedded within the electronic snow was something else, a pattern, almost musical in its repetition. "That's Morse code," she realized, her pulse quickening. "Old school, someone's trying to tell us something without using voice communications." As the pattern repeated, her mind automatically translated the dots and dashes. 3 letters over and over. SOS, but there was more coordinates, faint but unmistakable. And then, cutting through the static like a blade through silk, came 5 words that changed everything. "Whisper, we need you now." Someone knew exactly who she was. The game pieces scattered across the Persian Gulf were about to be reshuffled by the one player nobody saw coming. The quiet billionaire was about to remember why they'd once called her the most dangerous pilot in the Navy, and why some legends are better left undisturbed. But tonight, legend would have to do what bureaucracy could not. Admiral Chen's weathered face showed every one of his 62 years as he studied the tactical projections holographically displayed above the conference table. The morning briefing had devolved into something resembling controlled chaos, with intelligence officers throwing around theories that ranged from Iranian special forces to elaborate kidnapping schemes targeting high-value military assets. "The strait is a powder keg right now," Colonel Morrison was saying, gesturing at the red zones marked across the digital map. "Iranian naval exercises to the north, unidentified submarine contacts to the south, and now 6 missing SEALs right in the middle of it all." Zara sat quietly at the far end of the polished table, her presence tolerated rather than welcomed. To the assembled officers, she was simply another defense contractor with too much money and not enough military experience to truly understand the situation. They spoke around her, occasionally offering perfunctory nods when regulations demanded acknowledgement of her contributions to their budgets. "Ma'am, with respect," Admiral Chen addressed her with the kind of stiff politeness reserved for necessary civilians, "this is a military operation. We appreciate your financial support, but tactical decisions need to remain within the chain of command. Of course, Admiral. Zara's response was measured, professional. She'd learned long ago that revealing too much too quickly only complicated matters. I'm simply here to observe and offer any resources that might be helpful. What she didn't mention was the secure satellite phone in her briefcase, connected to a network that made the Navy's communications array look like tin cans and string, or the fact that her observations were being fed directly to a team of analysts in a facility that officially didn't exist, processing data streams that would make the CIA jealous. Intelligence suggests the missing team was investigating reports of unusual naval activity, continued Morrison. Possible weapons smuggling, may be worse. The Iranians have been testing some new toys lately. Through the conference room's windows, the flight deck bustled with pre-dawn activity. F-18 Super Hornets were being prepped for patrol missions, their blue-gray profiles stark against the carrier's white deck markings. Zara watched the choreographed dance of maintenance crews and pilots with the eye of someone who'd once been part of that world. "Weather's turning," noted the meteorology officer. "Visibility dropping to near zero by 1400 hours. If we're going to mount a rescue operation, we need to launch within the next 6 hours." 6 hours to find 6 men in 1,000 square miles of hostile water, Chen muttered. Needle in a haystack doesn't begin to cover it. That's when the communications officer burst through the conference room doors, his face flushed with excitement and terror in equal measure. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission on a secure channel. The sender claims to have information about Bravo Team." "Put it through," Chen ordered. The speakers crackled to life, and a voice emerged from the static, calm, professional, speaking with the kind of authority that comes from absolute certainty. "USS Leviathan, this is Midnight Phoenix. Your missing assets are alive but in immediate danger. Recommend immediate tactical response, grid coordinates to follow." Admiral Chen's expression shifted from confusion to recognition, to something approaching shock. Midnight Phoenix had been a classified call sign from a Black Ops program that officially never existed. Someone was using identification codes that should have been buried with the rest of that program's secrets. Zara remained perfectly still, but her eyes had sharpened with interest. The voice on the radio had just raised the stakes considerably. The coordinates led to a cluster of abandoned oil platforms 30 miles northeast of their last known position. From the air, they looked like metallic spiders crouching on the water's surface, their legs extending deep into the Persian Gulf's murky depths. Intelligence photos showed signs of recent activity, fresh tire tracks on the helicopter pads, equipment caches that hadn't been there a week ago. "Visual contact on Platform 7, reported Lieutenant Commander Hayes from the cockpit of his F-18. "Definitely seeing movement down there, but I can't make positive identification from this altitude." Admiral Chen stood in the command center, studying the live feed from the reconnaissance flight with growing unease. The platforms had been officially decommissioned 5 years ago, purchased by a shell company that seemed to exist only on paper. But someone had clearly been using them as a staging area for something far more substantial than simple smuggling. "Sir," the intelligence officer approached with a tablet displaying satellite imagery. "We've been tracking increased naval activity in this sector for the past 2 weeks. Iranian fast attack craft, but also some signatures we can't identify. Someone's been building something out there." Zara absorbed every detail while maintaining her position as an interested observer. Her secure phone had been buzzing with incoming data streams for the past hour: thermal imaging, electronic signatures, communications intercepts that painted a picture far more complex than a simple hostage situation. Her analysts had identified at least 12 distinct threat signatures operating in the area, including submarine contacts that definitely weren't showing up on the Navy's sonar arrays. "Admiral," she said quietly, "I may be able to provide additional reconnaissance assets, My company has some experimental platforms that could give us better intelligence without risking additional personnel. Chen turned to study her with newfound interest. In the past hour, something had shifted in the room's dynamic. The civilian contractor who'd been tolerated as a necessary evil was now offering resources that could make the difference between mission success and catastrophe. What kind of assets? Autonomous aerial vehicles, completely deniable, equipped with full-spectrum surveillance equipment. They can get closer than manned aircraft without triggering defensive responses. What she didn't mention was that those experimental platforms were operated by pilots working from a command center, buried 3 levels beneath a corporate headquarters in Virginia, flying missions that officially never happened for organizations that officially didn't exist. The same kind of missions she'd once flown herself, back when Whisper was more than just a memory. How quickly can you deploy? They're already airborne, Zara replied, and even the most experienced officers in the room paused at the implications of that statement. Should have eyes on target in approximately 18 minutes. Admiral Chen's expression shifted from suspicion to something approaching respect. Whoever this woman was, she'd been planning for this contingency long before they'd even identified the problem. That kind of foresight didn't come from corporate boardrooms. It came from operational experience at the highest levels. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "I think it's time we discussed exactly what kind of company you're running." Through the command center windows, the morning sun painted the Persian Gulf in shades of gold and copper. But somewhere out there, 6 American warriors were running out of time, and the quiet woman in the expensive suit was about to reveal just how deep her rabbit hole actually went. The game was about to change in ways none of them expected. The drone footage came through in crystal-clear high definition, revealing details that made everyone in the command center lean closer to their monitors. Platform 7 wasn't just occupied. It had been converted into something resembling a floating fortress. Armed guards patrolled walkways between prefabricated structures, while technical equipment that definitely wasn't standard oil drilling gear occupied every available space. "Jesus Christ," whispered Colonel Morrison. "That's a signals intelligence array. Someone's been intercepting our communications from right under our noses." Zara watched the feed with professional detachment, but her mind was racing through tactical possibilities. The platform's defensive positions were professionally arranged, suggesting military-level planning. Whoever had taken the SEALs wasn't some opportunistic terrorist group. This was a sophisticated operation months in the making. "Thermal imaging shows at least 15 heat signatures on the main platform," reported the drone operator's voice through the secure link. "Additional signatures on adjacent structures. Estimated enemy strength between 20 and 30 personnel." "Any sign of our people?" Admiral Chen's voice carried the weight of command responsibility. "Negative visual contact, but there's a structure on the platform's northeast corner that's showing unusual heat patterns. Could be a holding facility." That's when Zara's secure phone buzzed with an incoming priority message. The text was brief but chilling. "Bravo team confirmed alive. Execution scheduled for 1800 hours. Recommend immediate action." She looked up to find Admiral Chen studying her with sharp intelligence. "You're getting intelligence that we're not, aren't you?" "My sources have different access points," she replied carefully. "The good news is that your people are alive. The bad news is that we have less than 8 hours before that changes." The command center erupted in controlled activity as officers began planning a rescue operation that would push every resource to its limits. The platforms were too far from shore for traditional helicopter assault, too heavily defended for simple aerial attack, and surrounded by enough open water to make any approach a nightmare of tactical complications. "We need to consider a submarine approach," suggested the operations officer. "Come up from underneath, neutralize the guards, extract our people before they know what hit them." That's a 12-hour round trip minimum, Chen replied grimly. We don't have 12 hours. Zara stood and moved to the tactical display, her fingers tracing potential approach routes with the precision of someone who'd spent years studying three-dimensional combat spaces. There's another option. I'm listening. A single aircraft flying low enough to avoid radar detection could reach the platform in under an hour. Fast insertion, surgical extraction, minimal footprint. One aircraft against 30 hostiles on a fortified platform. Morrison shook his head. That's not a rescue mission, that's a suicide run. Not if the pilot knows what they're doing, Zara replied quietly. Not if they've done this kind of thing before. The silence that followed was pregnant with unspoken questions. Admiral Chen was studying her with the kind of intensity usually reserved for enemy battle plans, clearly reassessing everything. He thought he knew about the quiet contractor who'd been writing his operational checks. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "I think it's time you told us exactly who you are." Zara reached into her briefcase and withdrew a worn leather portfolio, placing it on the conference table with deliberate precision. When she opened it, the faces around the table went completely still. Inside was a collection of items that told a story decades in the making. Flight wings worn smooth by years of use, commendation ribbons that most officers would kill for, and a photograph of a younger woman standing beside an aircraft that wasn't supposed to exist. "Lieutenant Commander Zara Akaffer, call sign Whisper," she said quietly. "Naval Flight Test Center, Special Operations Division, officially retired 8 years ago." Admiral Chen picked up the photograph, studying the sleek aircraft in the background. "Ghost Bird program. I thought that was just a rumor." "Everything about Ghost Bird was a rumor," Zara replied. "That was the point." The Ghost Bird had been beautiful in the way that only truly lethal things could be beautiful. Sleek as a blade, black as midnight, capable of speeds and maneuvers that pushed human physiology to its absolute limits. Zara had been one of only 3 pilots qualified to fly it, back when the program existed in the shadows between official acknowledgement and plausible deniability. "The program was terminated after the incident in Yemen," Admiral Chen said, his voice carrying the weight of classified knowledge. "Official records say all aircraft were destroyed." "Official records say a lot of things," Zara replied. "The reality is that one prototype survived. It's been sitting in a hangar in Nevada for 8 years, officially non-existent but meticulously maintained by people who understood its potential value." The command center had fallen completely silent. Even the electronic chatter from communications arrays seemed muted, as if the equipment itself was listening to a conversation that was reshaping everything they thought they understood about their situation. "You're talking about flying a prototype aircraft on an unauthorized mission into hostile airspace to rescue 6 SEALs from a fortified position," Morrison said slowly. "Even if the aircraft still exists, even if you're still qualified to fly it, the diplomatic implications alone—" "There are no diplomatic implications," Zara interrupted, "because officially this conversation never happened. The Ghost Bird doesn't exist, I was never here, and 6 American heroes are going to come home alive because sometimes the right person shows up at exactly the right moment." She moved to the tactical display and began sketching flight paths with confident strokes. Her approach would come from the southwest, using the morning sun for concealment. The platform's defensive positions were oriented towards sea-level threats. They wouldn't be expecting an attack from directly above at near-supersonic speeds. "The insertion window is narrow," she continued, her voice taking on the crisp efficiency of a pilot running through pre-flight checks. "I can put down on the platform for exactly 90 seconds. Your people need to be ready to move the moment I touch down." "How do we coordinate with Bravo Team?" asked the communications officer. "We still can't raise them on any frequency." Zara's smile was sharp as winter starlight. "Bravo Team leader is Master Chief Rodriguez. His call sign in training scenarios is Compass Rose. If I broadcast that call sign on the emergency frequency, he'll know exactly what it means. Admiral Chen was studying her with something approaching awe. You trained them. I trained a lot of people. Most of them never knew my real name, but they all learned the same emergency protocols. When you're operating in the shadows, you develop your own methods of communication. The tactical display now showed a complete mission profile, approach vectors, defensive countermeasures, extraction timing, and fallback positions if everything went wrong. It was the kind of planning that usually took teams of specialists weeks to develop, compressed into a presentation that lasted less than 10 minutes. The Ghost Bird's weapon systems, Morrison asked. Still classified, Zara replied, but sufficient for the mission requirements. Through the command center windows, the Persian Gulf had transformed from golden morning light to the harsh white glare of midday. Time was running out with mathematical precision, and 6 American lives hung in the balance of a decision that would either be remembered as brilliant improvisation or catastrophic overreach. Admiral Chen stared at the tactical display for a long moment, weighing options that all carried unacceptable risks. Finally, he looked up at the woman who just revealed herself to be something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. How quickly can you be airborne? The aircraft is already being prepped, Zara replied. 90 minutes to wheels up. Then God help us all, Chen said quietly, because we're about to find out if legends can still fly. The hangar in Nevada had been sealed for 8 years, its contents officially non-existent, and its location known only to a handful of individuals with security clearances that went beyond black. But as the massive doors rolled open, revealing the aircraft waiting in climate-controlled silence, it became clear that non-existent didn't mean forgotten. The Ghost Bird looked exactly as Zara remembered it, 40 feet of angular perfection, its composite skin absorbing light like a physical manifestation of darkness itself. Every line had been designed for a single purpose: to slip through enemy defenses like smoke through a keyhole, strike with surgical precision, and vanish before anyone realized what had happened. She's beautiful, whispered Captain Torres, the test pilot who'd been assigned as Zara's systems operator. I've never seen anything like her. You haven't seen anything, Zara replied, running her hands along the aircraft's leading edge with the reverence of someone greeting an old friend. The beauty is in what she can do, not what she looks like. The ground crew worked with practiced efficiency, loading specialized equipment that had been developed specifically for this type of mission. Surveillance packages, communication jammers, and weapons systems that pushed the boundaries of what was technically possible within the confines of international law. Everything was modular, designed to be rapidly reconfigured for different operational requirements. Pre-flight checklist complete, reported the crew chief. All systems green, fuel at maximum capacity, weapons package configured for surgical strikes. Zara settled into the pilot's seat with the muscle memory of someone returning home after a long journey. The cockpit wrapped around her like a second skin, every control positioned exactly where her hands expected to find it. The displays came alive with information streams that painted a three-dimensional picture of airspace, extending hundreds of miles in every direction. Ghost Bird to control, she said into her headset, using call signs that officially didn't exist for a mission that would never appear in any official records. Ready for departure. Control to Ghost Bird, Admiral Chen's voice carried across the secure link with crystalline clarity. You are cleared for immediate takeoff. Godspeed, whisper. The aircraft lifted off the runway with the kind of acceleration that pressed human consciousness toward its limits. Within seconds, they were climbing through altitude levels that would have taken conventional aircraft minutes to reach. The Nevada desert fell away beneath them, replaced by a tactical display showing their route across 2,000 miles of some of the most dangerous airspace in the world. Time to target, Torres asked, his voice tight with concentration as he monitored the various systems' arrays. 1 hour, 47 minutes, Zara replied. We'll be approaching the platform just as the sun reaches its zenith. Maximum glare, minimum visibility for ground-based observers. The ghost bird sliced through the atmosphere with supernatural silence, its radar signature no larger than a sparrow despite its considerable size. Below them, commercial aviation continued its normal patterns, completely unaware that one of the world's most sophisticated weapons systems was passing overhead like a technological ghost. Bravo team's last known position, Tors reported, highlighting coordinates on the tactical display. No communication since the initial distress signal, but thermal imaging suggests they're being held in the northeastern structure. Master Chief Rodriguez is smart, Zara said with quiet confidence. He'll have his people ready to move when they see the cavalry arrive. The question is whether we can clear a landing zone before their captors realize what's happening. As they crossed into international airspace, the ghost bird systems began detecting the electronic signatures of naval vessels, radar installations, and communication arrays scattered across the Persian Gulf. Each contact was automatically cataloged and assessed for threat potential, building a real-time picture of a complex and dangerous operational environment. Hostile radar contact, Tors announced. Bearing 270, range approximately 100 miles, Iranian naval patrol. They won't see us, Zara replied with calm certainty, but we'll see them. The mission was entering its most critical phase, and somewhere ahead in the vast blue expanse of the Persian Gulf, 6 American warriors were waiting for a rescue they probably didn't believe was coming. The oil platform appeared on their sensors like a metallic island floating in an endless expanse of blue-green water. From 30,000 feet, it looked deceptively peaceful, just another piece of industrial infrastructure going about its routine business. But the ghost bird surveillance systems painted a very different picture, revealing defensive positions, patrol patterns, and weapon emplacements that transformed the innocent-looking structure into a heavily fortified floating base. Target acquired, Tors reported, his voice steady despite the adrenaline that was undoubtedly coursing through his system. Counting 12 hostiles in defensive positions, additional personnel inside structures. Bravo team thermal signatures confirmed in northeast building. Zara studied the tactical display with the cold precision of someone who'd spent years turning complex three-dimensional problems into simple binary solutions. The platform's defenders had positioned themselves well for sea-level threats, but they were completely unprepared for an attack from directly above at near-vertical angles. Beginning attack run, she announced, pushing the ghost bird into a dive that would have torn conventional aircraft apart. The G-forces pressed against them like a physical weight, but the aircraft held together with the kind of engineering integrity that came from unlimited black budgets and absolute performance requirements. The first pass was surgical in its precision. The ghost bird's weapon systems engaged defensive positions with rapid-fire bursts that neutralized threats before the targets even realized they were under attack. Muzzle flashes winked out one by one, as the platform's defensive capabilities were systematically dismantled from above. Defensive positions neutralized, Tors reported, clear to land. The ghost bird touched down on the platform's helicopter pad with the kind of precision that came from thousands of hours of training in impossible conditions. The moment the aircraft's wheels made contact, Zara was already moving, her combat gear perfectly configured for rapid deployment in hostile environments. Bravo team, this is Whisper, she broadcast on the emergency frequency. Compass rose, immediate extraction, 90 seconds. The response came almost immediately, the distinctive crack of shaped charges detonating as the SEALs breached their way out of the holding facility. 6 figures emerged from the smoke and debris, moving with the coordinated efficiency of America's finest special operations personnel. Master Chief Rodriguez reached the aircraft first, his weathered face showing surprise and recognition in equal measure. Whisper, I thought you were dead, retired, corporate. Zara smiled grimly as she helped the injured SEAL into the aircraft's passenger compartment. All of the above, but today I'm your ride home. The extraction took exactly 87 seconds from touchdown to liftoff. As the ghost bird climbed away from the platform, its surveillance systems recorded the facility's systematic destruction by prepositioned charges that the SEALs had managed to plant during their captivity. Whatever intelligence operation had been running from the platform was now reduced to twisted metal and black smoke. Ghost bird to control, Zara reported as they accelerated toward friendly airspace. Package secured, all personnel accounted for, mission accomplished. Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the secure link with poorly concealed relief. Outstanding work, Whisper. Welcome back. As the Persian Gulf fell away beneath them, Master Chief Rodriguez moved forward to the cockpit area. Ma'am, I don't know how to thank you for this. Don't thank me yet, Zara replied, checking their navigation systems. Thank me when we're back on the carrier and you're debriefing over coffee that doesn't taste like motor oil. Through the aircraft's windows, the afternoon sun painted the water in shades of gold and copper. 6 American heroes were going home alive, and somewhere in a classified facility, analysts were already processing the intelligence that the SEALs had gathered during their captivity. The mission was a success by any reasonable measure. But as they flew toward the USS Leviathan, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they'd uncovered something much larger than a simple hostage situation. The platform had been too sophisticated, too well-organized to be an isolated operation. The debriefing room aboard the USS Leviathan buzzed with controlled activity as intelligence officers processed the information that Bravo team had gathered during their 36 hours of captivity. Master Chief Rodriguez sat at the head of the conference table, his weathered hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that was indeed much better than motor oil, recounting details that painted a picture of an operation far more sophisticated than anyone had anticipated. They weren't terrorists, he was saying, his voice carrying the weight of hard-earned professional judgment. These were military professionals, professional interrogation techniques, sophisticated equipment, and they knew things about our operations that they shouldn't have known. Admiral Chen leaned forward, his expression grim. What kind of things? Call signs, operational procedures, mission parameters for classified operations dating back months. Someone's been feeding them intelligence from inside our own networks. Zara sat quietly in the corner of the room, officially present as a debriefed participant, but actually absorbing every detail for analysis by resources that officially didn't exist. Her secure phone had been buzzing with incoming data streams for the past hour, as her analysts cross-referenced the intelligence gathered from the platform with databases that made the Navy's classification system look like a public library. The equipment we saw was next-generation stuff, continued Petty Officer Martinez, one of Rodriguez's team members. Communications interceptors, signal analysis gear, some kind of quantum computing arrays that were processing data in real time. This wasn't some garage operation. This was state-level sophistication. Any indication of which state? Asked the intelligence officer. That's where it gets interesting, Rodriguez replied. The personnel were multinational. We heard at least 4 different languages, and the operational structure suggested a mercenary organization rather than traditional state actors. Zara's phone buzzed with an incoming priority message. The text was brief but concerning. Platform intelligence analysis complete. Recommend immediate consultation. This goes deeper than anticipated. She looked up to find Admiral Chen studying her with the kind of sharp intelligence that had earned him his stars. You're getting updates that we're not seeing, he observed. My analysts work faster than traditional intelligence channels, she replied carefully. "They've identified some patterns that might be relevant to your investigation." "Such as?" Zara stood and moved to the room's tactical display, her fingers tracing connections that formed a web of relationships spanning multiple continents. "The equipment your people observed represents technology that's only available to a handful of organizations worldwide. The operational sophistication suggests coordination at the highest levels of international intelligence communities." "You're talking about a conspiracy," Morrison said skeptically. "I'm talking about a business model," Zara corrected. "Information is the most valuable commodity in the modern world. Someone has figured out how to harvest it from military operations and sell it to the highest bidders." The room fell silent as the implications of that statement sank in. If Zara was correct, then every classified operation, every strategic plan, every tactical advantage that the Navy had developed over the past months could have been compromised by an organization that treated national security as just another market commodity. "The question," Admiral Chen said slowly, "is what we do about it." Zara's smile was sharp as winter starlight. "The first thing we do is make sure they don't realize how much we know. The second thing we do is find out who's been feeding them information from our side." Through the conference room's windows, the evening sun painted the Persian Gulf in shades of amber and gold. The successful rescue of Bravo Team had been just the beginning of something much larger and more dangerous. Somewhere in the shadows between official channels and plausible deniability, a war was being fought for the kind of information that could reshape the balance of global power. And the quiet woman who'd once been known as Whisper was about to demonstrate why some secrets were more dangerous when they were revealed than when they remained hidden in the darkness. The secure communications center 3 levels below the Leviathan's main deck hummed with the kind of electronic activity that suggested urgent data processing on a massive scale. Zara sat before an array of monitors that painted a digital picture of global intelligence networks, tracking information flows that most people couldn't even imagine existed. "Pattern analysis complete," reported the voice of her lead analyst through encrypted channels. "We've identified 17 separate intelligence breaches over the past 6 months, all following similar methodologies. Someone has been systematically harvesting classified information from military operations across 3 different theaters." Admiral Chen stood behind her, studying the data streams with growing concern. The rescue mission that morning had evolved into something resembling a counterintelligence operation of unprecedented scope and complexity. "The technology signatures we recovered from the platform match equipment purchases made by a network of shell companies," Zara continued, highlighting connections on the tactical display. "The money trail leads through banking systems in at least 5 different countries, but the operational control appears to be centralized." "Centralized where?" Chen asked. "That's what we're trying to determine. But whoever's running this operation has access to real-time intelligence from the highest levels of military command structures. They're not just stealing information, they're predicting our moves before we make them." Master Chief Rodriguez entered the communications center carrying a tablet loaded with additional intelligence that his team had managed to gather during their captivity. "Ma'am, we recovered some data fragments from their computer systems before the charges detonated. Might be useful." Zara plugged the tablet into her analysis array, and immediately the screens began displaying information that made everyone in the room go very still. Personnel files, operational plans, communication intercepts, all bearing classification levels that should have made them impossible to obtain through normal intelligence gathering methods. "Jesus Christ," whispered Colonel Morrison. "They have our complete order of battle for the entire Persian Gulf region." "Not just current operations," Zara observed, scrolling through files that painted a comprehensive picture of American military capabilities. "Future plans, strategic assessments, even contingency operations that exist only in theoretical planning stages. The implications were staggering. If hostile forces had access to this level of intelligence, then every American operation in the region was potentially compromised before it even began. Traditional military advantages like surprise, superior positioning, and tactical flexibility became meaningless when the enemy knew exactly what you were planning to do. We need to assume that everything we've discussed today has been compromised, Admiral Chen said grimly. Whatever countermeasures we develop need to operate outside normal channels. Already considered, Zara replied, her fingers dancing across control surfaces that configured communication arrays for maximum security. My people have been developing protocols for exactly this type of scenario. We can create a completely independent intelligence network, one that operates in parallel to official channels without any crossover points. You're talking about a shadow intelligence operation, Morrison said slowly. Even if it's technically legal, the political implications. The political implications of doing nothing are worse, Chen interrupted. If this intelligence network is as sophisticated as it appears, then traditional military responses are going to be ineffective. We need to fight information warfare with information warfare. Through the reinforced windows of the communications center, the evening sky above the Persian Gulf had deepened from amber to purple. The rescue mission that had begun with 6 missing SEALs had revealed a threat that potentially compromised every American military operation in the region. But as Zara continued processing the intelligence fragments recovered from the platform, she was beginning to see patterns that suggested something even more disturbing. The organization behind the intelligence harvesting wasn't just selling information to hostile governments. They were actively manipulating military operations to create situations that would generate even more valuable intelligence. Admiral, she said quietly, I think we need to consider the possibility that Bravo team's capture wasn't accidental. Someone wanted them to find that platform. The silence that followed was pregnant with implications that no one wanted to articulate. If Zara was correct, then they weren't just dealing with intelligence theft. They were dealing with an organization sophisticated enough to manipulate American military operations for their own purposes. The revelation hit Admiral Chen like a physical blow. If Bravo team's capture had been orchestrated, then everything about the rescue mission needed to be reconsidered through the lens of deliberate manipulation rather than tactical opportunity. You're suggesting that 6 American servicemen were deliberately endangered as part of an intelligence-gathering operation. His voice carried the kind of controlled fury that comes from having one's professional competence questioned at the most fundamental level. Zara continued analyzing the data fragments, her expression growing more grim with each new discovery. The timing was too perfect. Bravo team was diverted from their original mission by intelligence reports that placed high-value targets at exactly the coordinates where they were captured. Intelligence reports that we now know were false. Master Chief Rodriguez leaned forward, his weathered face showing the kind of anger that comes from realizing you've been played by professionals. You're saying someone fed us bogus intelligence specifically to get us captured. I'm saying someone understands our operational procedures well enough to predict exactly how we'd respond to specific types of intelligence. They knew that reports of weapons smuggling in that sector would trigger a SEAL reconnaissance mission. They knew the composition of the team, the timing of deployment, even the specific extraction protocols. The tactical display now showed a timeline that painted a picture of manipulation, extending back weeks before Bravo team's capture. False intelligence reports, carefully timed naval movements, even weather patterns that had been factored into the operations planning, all of it orchestrated to create a scenario that would place American Special Operations personnel in exactly the position their captors wanted them. But why? Asked Colonel Morrison. What's the strategic value of capturing 6 SEALs just to let them be rescued? Information.